If you or someone close to you has been through a divorce, I encourage you to listen to this episode. You may know that there are sometimes stages of grief, like any other loss and divorce. And it can take some time to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and decide that you are ready to not be sad or angry any longer. But when you get to that point, where do you start? Today's guest expert went through her own tumultuous divorce, and she realized that she wasn't taking her own advice that she provides to her executive coaching clients. She knew she could do better for herself and for other women who were on the same journey. Group and individual coaching can be so rewarding and very effective in putting the pieces together to not only recover from the divorce experience, but to move forward with a plan that builds a promising and worthwhile future. Health, wellness, career, relationships, and everything in between. We're removing the taboo from what really matters in midlife. I'm your host, Michelle Folan, and this is Asking for a Friend. Welcome to the show, everyone. I often say how lucky I am to be associated with such accomplished women, and today's guest is no exception. I have known Peg Ruppert for 40 years now. Peg, can you believe it?
Frightening.
She's worked in the area of executive coaching, organizational, and leadership development for the bulk of her career. And her home for the last 22 years has been as managing partner at Advantage Performance Group. Peg's role in coaching and leadership development has led her to her new passion, which is to help women rediscover their confidence and reclaim their life post-divorce. And her platform is aptly named Thrive Post-Divorce. Congratulations, Peg, and welcome to Asking for a Friend.
Well, thank you, Michelle. I'm so glad to be here. When you say 40 years, I really think, gosh, could we be that old? I can't believe it.
I know. When you start counting backwards, it's like,
no doubt. Well, it's only a number.
And we both look great.
That's right. Go with that.
Yeah, really. I'd love for you to just tell the listeners a little bit more about you, your family, and anything else that you think would be great to share.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I am a Midwesterner. I live in Cincinnati, grew up in Cincinnati. However, spent most of my early career in Chicago and Kansas City. But this is where I raised my kids, so I call this home. I have two adult children now, one 24 and one 25. One in Chicago, one in DC, and gosh, love spending time with them as often as possible. You'll often find me in either of those two cities, for sure. We go way back because we met in college.
Right.
I continued at the University of Cincinnati post-graduation to get my master's in adult education. I've been in that education world for a long time, as you mentioned.
I think that is really a cool segue for you into what you're doing now. But when did you get the itch to start doing something outside of your 9 to 5?
People talk about work-life balance. And I always say, well, it's not about work-life balance for me. It's about doing life. My life experiences have created different paths along the way. And in this case, you mentioned that I started this course, Thrive Post-Divorce. It's because I really hit a midlife curveball. I went through a divorce in my midlife, and it was something that was really surprising and overwhelming to me, but it also created a new pathway for me from an education standpoint. I was married for almost 25 years. My story is like so many of your listeners or friends of your listeners. It was an experience where I found out my husband was having an extramarital affair. Within a matter of weeks and days, my life and the life of my family was shattered. I was in a difficult place for a bit of time and had to work myself through it. And that's really how this pathway came about.
I appreciate you being comfortable enough to share your own situation, and I know that can be incredibly difficult, but it also gives you that experience and empathy when you're dealing with your own clients to be able to walk them through this with your own journey.
It's so true. Again, I had never prepared for this. You don't prepare for a divorce, and people never go into a marriage thinking that they're going to get divorced. When this situation occurs, it really is a midlife curveball. All of a sudden, you have to readjust and reclaim your life as you want to move forward.
How long had you been thinking about doing this program for women?
Well, I must say I had not been necessarily thinking about it for that long. I went through this experience and it came to a point where I realized in my day job, I teach executives and I coach executives around how to be better leaders. As I was going through this experience, it just hit me at some point. I need to apply what I'm teaching these executives to myself because I was focusing with them around their vision and their values and their strengths. At some point, I remember actually I was on a stage with 300 people in front of me. As I'm talking to them, in the back of my mind, there's like a script rolling. Peg, you need to do this for you. You need to be doing this stuff. That was really the epiphany for me. I came back from that trip and said, okay, you need to really reevaluate and rethink how you're going to recover from this. You're going to do it the same way you've been helping these executives for all of these years to be able to do that. That's really how it came to play. I wasn't really thinking about it for other people. I was thinking about it for myself. I put into action very specific steps around recovering and rebuilding my own life. As I went through that process, I started to get friends calling me saying, I'm going through this now. Can you coach me? How did you do it? I need help. People started saying, gosh, you need to write a book. That's where it started hitting me. Okay, I need to be able to formalize this in some way for other people.
It just made me think of something funny because when I got divorced, people kept telling me I need to write a book on how to have an amicable divorce. Never wrote the book, Peg. Maybe I need to get on it. Just a little personal question. How long do you think it took you to say, I'm done feeling sorry for myself, or I'm finished being mopey? How long was that for you?
For me, it was probably 6 months to a year. But I always say, first of all, going through this process, there are stages of grief. I mean, because when you go through a divorce, you are literally losing a part of you. You're losing someone in your life. And for many women, you're losing your identity. Your identity as being a part of a family or a couple or the friendships that you have. All of a sudden, that changes. Even the relationships with your ex's family that maybe you were so close to. I mean, I was 25 years with that family. When you think about all of those things, your identity really starts to crumble. And sometimes for some women, their confidence has actually been impacted well before the divorce. The research says that it takes women about 2 years to fully recover from a divorce. My intention in creating this program is to help accelerate that process. Because the other thing that you probably know, having friends that have been through divorce, some people never recover. They never really move out of that grief. Rather than stages of grief, I call it waves of grief. It's different because when you lose someone to death, they're gone. But when you're in a divorce situation, they keep coming back into your life at different points. If for you, you're co-parenting and things like that, they keep coming back into your life. You have to be able to get control of those stages, move through them so that you can heal, but not stay in that anger or depression or sullenness for too long, or else what happens is negative habits come about. I experienced that myself too. I was getting myself into negative habits. That was also a part of the breakthrough. Okay, I need to change this.
Those negative habits, negative thoughts, that attitude can be poisonous to your kids, too.
Uh,
I had Julie Hattershire on, and she does relationship coaching.
yes.
She talked a lot about that and how no matter how bad it gets, it's tough, but we cannot drag our kids through this with us.
For sure. It's funny, one of the modules or lessons in the course is around discovering your why. And for me, my why became my kids. Once I realized that in order for them to recover, I needed to recover. If I didn't get myself back, they would not be able to get their self back. That was one of the reasons that really drove me to this.
Back to the thing of grief, how do you walk someone through that process to get on the other side of the grieving process?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a great question. And Michelle, first thing I always tell people is that I am not a therapist. I'm an educator, but I'm not a therapist. For many people, they really need to get professional therapy in order to work themselves through some of the real depression that some women face when they're going through this process. However, I always say that I help women when they are ready to rediscover their lives. So they've moved through some of that initial sadness and anger and what can be depression. They're moving through. Those waves are not tidal waves anymore. They're waves against the sand. They're coming in and out, but they want to recover. They want to rediscover their lives. And that's where I move in from a support standpoint, because my job is once they're thinking to themselves, I need to do something, I become, how do I do it? And that's usually the question I get from people. People say, how do I do it? How do I reclaim my life? And that's where I come in.
Okay, great. Then there's the loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about the detachment from the other side of the family and those sorts of things. And maybe you lost a chunk of your friend group because sometimes there's that they choose between one spouse or the other. The loneliness of maybe being an empty nester now, and then battling that. You probably had a little bit of that yourself because your kids were out of the house.
Yep. In fact, when I was going through it, my youngest, my son, was literally just graduating from high school and leaving to go to college. On top of the divorce, there was the empty nester situation that was also occurring. And I just had this conversation a couple weeks ago with a client who was telling me that she just felt so lonely. We were talking about the difference between being lonely and being alone, and embracing that alone time to really develop yourself. Because again, if you're in that mode of I'm lonely, it can get you into this negative space. We really focused on what are things that she can do that will enable her to leverage that alone time in a positive way. You mentioned that being single. It's another question I get all the time. In fact, I keep saying that that's one of my next courses is embracing singlehood, because that's a question I get. How do I get used to being single? I was married for so long. Of course, a lot of times people will, because they don't think they want to be single, they will start dating well before they're ready. You have to do this work inside first.
You know, I was just going to laugh because I was thinking, ask all the married women out there that would like to be alone for a little while.
No doubt.
I think there are married women that are a little envious at times.
Yep.
Of, oh, they have time to do stuff for themselves and reconnect with their friends. And, oh, they can have a hobby now.
Yes.
I'm being tongue-in-cheek, but you know what I'm saying, how loneliness is what you make of it. That's what I hear you saying.
Embrace being alone.
Yeah.
And embrace that time. Even me now, I've been with the same partner. I've been with him for going on 4 years now, but I still carve out my alone time and enjoy my alone time and enjoy being in my house by myself. But again, in the old days, I would not have said that. That's why it's important to learn how to do it.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you, how'd you meet this boy?
Well, I did meet through a dating website. It's another course I'm going to teach because I have this process. I call it batch of cookies. There's a real process to managing those social media dating applications. However, I actually started dating before I was ready. And guess what? I was attracting the exact same people. I was attracting the same person I had been married to for 25 years.
Right.
I had to stop dating altogether and really focus on myself from the inside out so that I could get to a point that, because my values were so clear, my strengths were so clear, that I would attract and identify the right person for me, which I have absolutely have done. There is a next chapter, if you want it, in that, to be dating and to be with a partner that you're fully committed to, if you want it. But you have to do the work first, the inside work.
Got to kiss a few frogs before you
Oh, I kissed many.
get the prince.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I did a couple of those too. They make great stories to share at Girls' Night Out, though.
My goodness.
I had a few that were just absolutely hilarious. And as you know, I did meet Michael on internet dating site as well.
Yep.
There's some good things that come out of those. People just think they're different. And you know what? I would never have met him had I not signed up for Match.com. We lived 30 seconds away from each other, but our paths would never have crossed.
Would not have naturally crossed. Absolutely.
Mm-mm.
But you were ready. That is the difference, when you're ready.
Do you have anything in your course around children? We talked a little bit about just making sure that you don't get too negative and drag your kids through this. Is there any other advice you have for women with kids and how to handle that process?
I'm not a therapist, but when I talk to my friends who are going through this, I'm always advising them to make sure to try to keep their kids out of it. My kids were so worried about me. I had to be careful not to let them see me in my emotional state as much so that they could feel okay about leaving. I was actually lucky, though, that they were both out of my house. When I was going through much of this, they weren't home. I could go through that and put on a happy face when they called me. That's my only advice there. Everyone's situation's different with their kids.
In your program now, as it is, what are the stages that you take your clients through?
Sure. I mentioned that I was going to write a book. I was really starting on that book, and I might still write that book. But I thought to myself, I want something to be more actionable than a book. I still want it to be self-consumable. That's the beauty of a book. You can self-consume it. However, books so often don't give you the action. I made a decision, I'm going to create an actionable process for people to go through based on my own experience. I built 5 lessons into this initial course. The first one is around discovering your strengths, the things that you do better than anyone else. I call them your signature strengths, or your native genius, if you will. What do you do better than anyone else you know? Better than anything else you do? That's the first module, because your strengths are your power. That's your powerhouse. The more people can spend time in their strength zone, the more it will build their confidence. That's why we start there. In the second module, we move to this focus on values. I was listening to one of your recent podcasts, and she was talking about values and your core values, and that any of us could rattle off a couple of core values that we have. But this is about activating those values. All values are good, but you cannot live all of your values all of the time. And your values also change. Your values change based on your life. For example, for me, financial freedom is a real value of mine now. When I was married, we were a dual career couple. I wasn't worried about financial freedom at all. However, after going through a divorce and paying alimony, you can bet financial freedom, top of my list. People will say to me all the time, well, health is a value of theirs. They may say that they work out once or twice a week or whatnot. Values are things that people who see you, they see them in action. Your values have to be actionable, which is what brings it to the third module, which is all around habits and habit stacking. If you take that health value and you say, like for me, I do Pilates. Every day I'm in town, I do Pilates. But I stacked a habit on top of that, which is meditating on my way to Pilates every morning. I don't listen to the radio. I don't talk on the phone. I use that as my meditation time, my gratitude time, because that's a part of my mental health. It's all about creating these little habits that will activate your values and keep you in your strength zone. That's really what that third module is all about. I'm guessing you have good habits that way as well.
They're getting better. No, and actually, I think towards the end of 2022, I got away from some of my good habits. That's been my mantra coming into 2023. It's not so much about New Year's resolutions. It's really about getting back to where I feel most comfortable and where I know I perform my best mentally and physically.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I am hearing a little bit of self-care in this too, where, and I know I say this all the time, so I hope my listeners don't get tired of it, but if we don't show up for ourselves, we can't show up for others.
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes is, put your oxygen mask on first so that you can show up for everybody else.
Yep.
I think your clients are really going to benefit from establishing this stuff up front so that they have that foundation. I love that.
It really is foundational, Michelle. You're absolutely right. And this course is all about that oxygen mask, putting that on for yourself. Because when you talked about the children, if you don't do these things for yourself, then they're not able to recover either. By the way, what a great role model you are when you're doing these things for yourself, taking care of yourself. You're clear about your values. You're clear about your strengths. Your habits are in line with that. That is sending an important message to them as well.
Absolutely. All right. So that was 1, 2, 3. Do you have any other modules that you take your clients through?
Yes. In this course, there are 5 modules. The 4th module after strengths, values, and habits is around your why and really getting clear about your why. I do a really cool exercise that's called 7 layers deep that gets people to really go deep and dig into their why. Why did they need to recover? Why did they need to reclaim their life right now? And as I mentioned, when I did my why the first time, it became really clear to me that I needed to do this, yes, for myself, but also for my kids, that if I didn't do this, they would never be able to recover either. When I focused on this for creating this course, my why was simply that if I didn't do this, then I wouldn't have the opportunity. If I even help one woman, which of course we already have helped many women, that's my why, is how do I help others accelerate? Because I had the tools to be able to do it. I want others to have that tool. The why is the 4th module. And then the 5th module is all around your great future. I call it the windshield of life. What you can imagine is that most people spend a lot of their time post-divorce in the rearview mirror. And there's a reason why the rearview mirror is so much smaller than the windshield.
Love it.
We need to learn from that rearview mirror, absolutely. But the focus is for the future. Where do you want to take your life? The final module of this first course is really about personal visioning, creating your vision board, getting clear about where you want to go. Because if you are clear about where you want to go, that's the first step to getting there.
You said something earlier about the financial freedom. When you're working with women who all of a sudden get thrust into a situation where they may have to go back to work and they've been at home, raising kids, taking care of a home, doing all that stuff, which we know is a huge job, how do you walk somebody down that path? Because talk about upsetting your life apple cart.
It's funny because my other side job, and again, these are mostly volunteer activities, but for years I've been helping people with their resumes, with their career, because I work in companies all day long. I know what organizations want. I very specifically am right now building a course around how do you restart your career? How do you go back to work? Because for so many women post-divorce, in order to regain their own financial freedom, they can't live off of whatever alimony they're getting in most cases. They have to go back to work or they have to re-jump their career. Helping them to repolish that resume and prepare for those interviews. But just think about it, Michelle, if they haven't done that inside work first, it is so much more difficult for them to attract the right job, just like attracting the right person. If you're going to attract the right job, you've got to be clear about your strengths, your values, your habits, because that's the can do, will fit of finding the right job for yourself. That's next on the docket. I'm literally writing it now.
Oh, that's a really good one because that's reality. I'm going to give you my 2 cents on something.
Please.
Women who may not have worked in the workforce for years, maybe some since before they had kids, they need to find value in all those things that they did as a mom, as a volunteer.
Yeah.
I don't care if you were homeroom mom and you organized all the parties, you were in charge of bid and buy at your church festival. All that stuff is meaningful. And I will tell you, I'd hire that person because I know that they can
Yeah.
rally the troops, they're organized. I just don't want to see women minimize those experiences.
They undervalue them. It's interesting you talk about organizing the bid and buy. One of my very first clients, we were getting into her strengths. One of the things as we were working through her strengths was this whole thing. She's an organizer. I actually have them name it. Name your strength. She was like organizer extraordinaire. This was something she did as a hobby. Her house was completely organized. You open the junk drawer and there's no junk there.
Ugh.
That's something she's really good at. Well, guess what? She has a great career now working for a closet company. She leveraged that strength. So she's advising customers now about their closets and their organization. She leveraged that life strength that she had. It would not have dawned on her had she not really valued that strength and identified it, called it out as one of her greatest strengths.
That is such a great story.
Yep.
Oh, see, I love that. Isn't that what gets you out of bed in the morning?
It is.
I mean, think about that.
This path, it was not a path I was expecting to take. It was not a path I chose to take or even wanted to take. But once I moved through the path, it became so clear to me that this was something I wanted to help other women through this journey and to accelerate their process through this journey.
How does your program run? Do you do one-on-one and group, or is it just depending on the client?
Depending on the client. I created it so that it didn't require one-on-one or group coaching if someone didn't want it. I wanted it to be that book that was self-consumable for those people who wanted it. However, when you take the course, you're also immediately invited into a private Facebook community. And this private Facebook community is a community of women helping women and people who are all moving through this process together, who want to rediscover and reclaim their life and rebuild their confidence. They're helping each other out, and I go in live into that community on a regular basis. Now, there are some clients who have then said, hey, you haven't written the course yet on career development, but I need some help on my career development. I want to do some one-on-one coaching on that. I'll do that as well. But really, the intention of the course was that people could do it on their own and get immediate value from it. And then if they want to take it to the next level and get coaching, I'm there for them.
Oh, that's great. And I could see where the group coaching would be really nice. The camaraderie, and then I bet there'll be some friendships and things that would evolve out of that too.
We're already seeing that come about. Absolutely. There are lots of Facebook groups for women who are going through a divorce, and they're in those waves of anger and sadness and frustration and depression. And I'm in those groups, so I'm reading and really looking into what they're saying and trying to help them in that group as well. But this group is really at that next stage where they are focused on the rebuilding and cheering each other on in that positive way, and then creating those friendships and those relationships.
Women are really good at that. Mm-hmm. I had a gentleman named Brock Edwards on the show because I wanted to get a midlife perspective from a male. He even said that. He's like, men aren't as good at that, but he's like, God, women just really are great at building community. No matter what you build your community around, and in your case, this is around divorce and recovering from divorce. I think it's fantastic that women are open and supporting each other throughout their process. Where can people find you? Because I know you're on Instagram.
I am on Instagram, Thrive Post Divorce. I'm also on Facebook, but my Thrive Post Divorce on Instagram is just a much more active community for some reason or the other. You can go to the course at https://thrivepostdivorce.com. to get the course. And in fact, I did just have our webmaster create a special code, AFAF, for any of your listeners. I realize many people who are listening may not actually be divorced, but what I've found is that I've had mothers who have bought the course for their daughters. I have had friends get the course for their friends. In fact, I had 2 or 3 friends that went in on the course for their friend and gave it to her for her birthday. That's how you can access it. It's $39. It's the cost of a good hardback book with the discount with AFAF.
Oh.
I hope that people will get value.
What I'll do is I'll put that in the show notes, and I'll also create a link on my bio for that in Instagram so people will know where to find it. And I would say $39 is a lot less than people spend at Starbucks in a month.
And a week right now.
I know.
Dear Lord.
I barely leave my house. I'm not going to Starbucks very often.
Absolutely. Well, that's special price just for asking for a friend clients, but we wanted to be able to do something special for you and for all of your listeners. That really, as you know, pays for web hosting. At the end of the day, this is not going to create my financial freedom. It's really all about this creating a pathway to get more women accelerating their recovery post-divorce.
Oh, Peg, I think it's wonderful. I love your mission. I love your message. It's so upbeat and positive. I hope women are listening to this. If you do have a daughter or you do have a good friend, a sister who is going through a tough time and is really wanting to get on the other side of things with a positive trajectory, I highly recommend Thrive Post-Divorce because I think you're walking the walk and talking the talk. That's what people need to hear.
No doubt. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. Again, congratulations on your podcast. I have completely enjoyed listening in to all of your great speakers. You've found some really good ones.
Well, thank you, Peg. And you two are doing a little midlife pivot here. I keep telling everybody, you're never too old. It's never too late. If there's something you want to do, you've got all this life experience to go out and get whatever it is that you want.
Absolutely. Just do it.
Thanks, Peg. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Take care.
Follow Asking for a Friend on social media outlets and provide a review and share this show wherever you get your podcasts. Reviews and sharing help us grow.